Alright everyone, it's me, some northern guy, and this is a video I've been wanting to do for quite some time. I've seen quite a lot of these videos around on YouTube, and I thought I'd finally get round to doing my favourite Pokemon of every single type, because I love Pokemon. And this is actually, I never really thought about what my favourite types were, but doing this video has actually made me realise, I guess these are technically my 18 favourite Pokemon, if you think about it that way. So here we go, let's jump straight into it. Okay, so we're starting with the electric type. My favourite electric type is Magneton. Mostly just because I think it just looks cool. I love the whole concept of Magneton and Magnemite. I know it's probably the most laziest design for an evolution ever amongst a few others, but I've just always liked Magneton. It's one of my childhood favourites from Red and Blue, and Magnezone is okay, I guess. I mean, that was an evolution done well, but Magneton takes the cake, easily. Plus, when it got the steel typing, that made a lot of sense. I mean, it was a magnet, for crying out loud. But I always forgot it had levitate, so cocky me would send it out against a ground type, thinking, haha, you can't hit me, and then 4 times super effectiveness. Those were the dark days. The dark type is next, and I've gone for Sableye, mostly because of its prankster ability. I love using Sableye in competitive battling, and he's just such an annoying Pokemon to go up against, but such a fun Pokemon to use. I don't really like his Mega Evolution that much. It's pretty cool, and you know, I like how he has the gem as a big shield and stuff, and he was definitely deserving of one, especially since Mawile already got one. But I just prefer normal Sableye, is mostly just because of prankster. I've wound up so many of my friends just starting with Sableye and taunting them so they can't set anything up, and then just using it to just annoy them to no end. Plus I love his design, look at him, he looks so cheeky, it's brilliant. Jumping on to the fire type, my favourite fire type is Charizard. Now I know what you're thinking, oh, Charizard's his favourite fire type Pokemon, how original. But the reason being is strictly just nostalgia. Charmander was the very first Pokemon I picked back on Blue, all those years ago when I very first picked up a Pokemon game. So naturally, it's always going to be one of my favourite Pokemon, and I remember when my Charmeleon evolved into Charizard, I was just so happy, and ever since Charizard has just been my favourite fire type. He's one of my favourite Pokemon of all time, just from a nostalgic sense. I would love to have a Charizard in real life. And I know, Stealth Rocks are a thing, but so is Mega Evolution, and he gets 2. For the poison type, I've gone with Nidoking. I never really used Nidoking, and like the evolutionary branch of the Nidoran, Nidorina, all them, I never really used them on Red and Blue. So I only ever used Nidoking for the first time properly, was actually competitively, as a special attacker, and I just fell in love with it. Life Orb and Sheer Force, with such a fantastic move pool of great coverage, and I was sold, completely sold. I'd make a habit of saving him till last and then just using him to clean up shop right at the end of the battle, because he could just tear through so much stuff. And he was just such a great Pokemon to use. And I actually, one thing that freaks me out about Pokemon is how, like, the sizes, or not freaks me out, I always thought Nidoking, because in the anime he's just massive. But really, he's 4'7". That's not pretty big at all. Moving on to the Steel type, for my favourite Steel type, I've gone with Skarmory. Mostly similar story to Nidoking. I use it competitively. It was the first time I ever used it properly, and I just really love using Skarmory. You know, access to spikes and stealth rocks was great, sturdy, the immunity to earthquake, whirlwind, all the fun stuff. Plus it just looks awesome. I love the design of Skarmory. I would have really liked it if it had a pre-evolution. I think it really deserves one. Maybe he'll get one in Gen 7. But even if he doesn't, he's still just going to be my favourite Steel type. I just look at it, it's great. Imagine flying around on a Skarmory. Rock type is next, and I've gone for Golem. And this is because when I get a new Pokemon game, I like to use Pokemon I've never used before. And when I first got Heart Gold, I said, okay, I've never actually leveled a Geodude all the way to a Golem in a main playthrough. So I got Geodude, it was actually the first Pokemon I caught on Heart Gold after getting my starter, and leveled him all the way to Graveler, trading him over with my friend to get Golem and all that. And I just loved him. Gollum is so great. I wish I used one in red and blue. He just looks cool. I love his design. I always liked in the anime how he could just curl up into a ball and just roll over people. And I know his defenses aren't exactly great from a competitive standpoint, but in my playthrough of Heart Gold, he was my main defense, and he tanked so many hits for me. So, Gollum, more like Brolum. For fairy type, I've gone for Azumarill, and I don't really like a lot of fairy types. I mean, I like the type. I think it was a great addition to Pokemon, but I wish Game Freak had made more fairy types instead of just like the handful we got and then going back to changing all types. Changing the types of all the Pokemon was great, but I would have liked a lot more new fairy types. So I don't really like a lot of them. But I've always been a fan of Marill and Azumarill as well. Don't really like Azurill, but Azumarill with the fairy type, one, that dragon immunity, but then huge power with a belly drum Azumarill and an Aqua Jet. Oh, it's just magic. It was meant to be. Definitely proof that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Moving swiftly on to the ice type, and I've gone with Mamoswine for two reasons. One, it's a woolly mammoth, and I like woolly mammoths. I think they're pretty cool. And the second one is, like Magnezone, as I mentioned earlier, it's an evolution done right. Gen 4 brought us all these evolutions of older Pokemon, and some of them were terrible, but some of them, like Mamoswine, were just fantastically done. And it feels natural. It feels right. If I'd never played Pokemon before until Generation 4, I would have thought that Piloswine always evolved into Mamoswine. You know, I often forget that it didn't for 2 whole generations. So, well done, Game Freak. You made an evolution that was absolutely fantastic, and I just loved using Mamoswine in Heart Gold, so much so that when I got Black 2, I actually traded it over because I needed an Ice type, and I loved it so much, I just wanted to use it again. Water type, and my favourite water type is Squirtle, and this one was a really tough choice between Squirtle and Feraligatr. Because Feraligatr is my favourite water starter, final evolution, but Squirtle is just my favourite basic form, and he's always been my favourite of the Gen 1 starters, as in Squirtle, Charmander, Bulbasaur. But I'm not a big fan of Wartortle and Blastoise. If I'm honest, my favourite middle form, or Stage 1, is Ivysaur. My favourite Stage 2 is Charizard. So it kind of works out well. I think that's why I liked Pokemon Trainer so much in Brawl, to be honest. But Squirtle has just always been just the top dog, especially in the anime. I think that's why I like him so much. With the whole Squirtle Squad thing, and whenever those sunglasses came out, you know shit was about to go down. So we've had fire, we've had water, and now it's time for the grass type. My favourite grass type was actually a really hard pick, because I don't like a lot of them. I mean, it came down to a debate between Trico, Quilladin, of all Pokemon, and the winner for my favourite grass type, which is Leafeon. And the reason being, Leafeon is my favourite evolution, first and foremost. I love its design, it looks fantastic. Glaceon as well, actually. That was a close pick for my favourite ice type, but Mamoswine just topped it. Glaceon and Leafeon look brilliant. They're my favourite 2 evolutions. And to be honest, I always thought the original trio of evolutions should have been Fire, Water, Grass. It always messed with my head a little bit when I was younger that we had Fire, Water and Grass starter Pokemon, but the evolutions were Fire, Water and Electric, and then to make things even more confusing, the legendary trio was Fire, Electric and Ice. And I know I'm not the only one who tried to use a Leaf Stone on the Eevee back in Red and Blue. Imagine if that had actually worked and we got Leafeon all the way from Gen 1. It wouldn't surprise me if we were actually meant to get 4 evolutions in Generation 1, but then they decided to cut it down to 3 and poor Leafeon just didn't make the cut. Ghost types next then, and my favourite ghost type is Aegislash, and to this day I still don't know if I'm pronouncing this right or not. I just love the concept of Aegislash. When Honedge got revealed, I fell in love with Honedge immediately, and then once Aegislash and Doublade were revealed after it, I just loved it. I knew there and then I was getting that Pokemon when X and Y came out, and I wasn't disappointed. The whole concept of Aegislash and the mechanic of King Shield and the stance changes, I just absolutely love it. It's such a fun thing to do in battle, and you can play some serious mind games with your opponents, and that's always fun. Ground type, I've gone for Glysaur, because once again, it's an evolution done right. I always forget Glysaur's Gen 4, but Gligar is Gen 2. It feels natural, it was a fantastic design, and I love using a Toxic Style Glysaur with the Poison Orb and the Poison Heal. It's so fun. I tend to really enjoy bulky Pokemon that can stall people out. I just like winding people up in Pokemon battles. I'd definitely rather take the stally approach than the punch you in the face with like a dragon shark thing. But that's besides the point. Glysaur, fantastic ground type. Immunity to both electric and ground type moves. You can't really go wrong. Moving on to the psychic type, I've chosen Starmie. And I've chosen Starmie because there aren't a lot of psychic types I actually like. I mean, Gardevoir and Gallade are okay. Alakazam is he's just there, isn't he, I guess. But Starmie has always been my favourite of Misty's Pokemon, both from the games and from the anime. Brock was a piece of cake, unless you had Charmander. But once you got up to Misty, even if you had Bulbasaur, that Starmie would wreck your face if you were not prepared for it. And I just loved the challenge. I would purposely build a team up to the second badge in order to beat that Starmie. I would go and get a Bellsprout, I'd get a Pikachu, I'd use them to beat Misty, and then just box them and never use them again. I can't really remember the first time I used it, but it was definitely in a competitive sense. I think I just used it for like a special attacker with Rapid Spin. Great coverage as well, Hydro Pump, Thunderbolt and Ice Beam. You can't really go wrong with that. For flying type, I chose Pidgeot, and it was mostly just out of nostalgia. It was the original bird Pokemon, and in the anime I loved Ash's Pidgeotto, and when it finally evolved into a Pidgeot, I was so excited for him to then leave it behind and never return. Why would you do this? Why? Pidgeot was so awesome. And I remember on the games, those were the two evolutions I would look forward to the most. It would be my starter Pokemon evolving, and then Pidgeotto evolving. And I know it's outclassed stat-wise by some of the other bird Pokemon, but Pidgeot would just always be my favourite. Bug type is next, and my favourite bug type has only been my favourite for only a couple of weeks, and it's Dustox. And the reason being, I've started again on Alpha Sapphire, and I have used a Dustox before, back on Sapphire, Ruby, Emerald, but I used to always just get rid of it when I found something to replace it. I always did that with the generic bug type of every single game. But Dustox, I decided to keep it on this time round, and it's just so great. I have no idea why I got rid of it back in the day, because it is awesome. I love the way it looks in Generation 6, and it's probably one of the most reliable Pokemon on my team on Alpha Sapphire at the moment. It's won so many battles for me. So Dustox, buddy, I'm so sorry I judged you all those years ago, but I've finally seen the light. You were one kick-ass moth. Almost at the end, and next up is Normal, and this was a tough choice between Blissey and Diggersby. Cause look at Diggersby, he's so cool. But I had to go with Blissey, and again, it's going back to how I like to stall people out competitively and use the bulky Pokemon, and Blissey is just such a tank. You can punch that thing, well, you can't really, I guess, because it's weak to fighting, but it can stand there and you can set fire to it and douse it in water for days, and it'll just shrug it off like it was nothing. And I know that most people would rather use a Chansey with an EV-Olite just for that extra boost in defenses, but I like having access to leftovers, and to be honest, I prefer the design of Blissey. Fighting types next, and my favourite fighting type, as you might have guessed already, is Infernape. Why Infernape? Well, my two favourite things when I was a kid were Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. And in my eyes, Infernape is the closest Pokemon we have to Goku. I mean, they're both based off Sun Wukong from Journey to the West. You know, when Infernape uses close combat in the anime, it looks like a Dragon Ball Z fight. And in the battle with Paul in the Pokemon League, where he uses Blaze and it powers up, look me in the eye and tell me this doesn't look like it's going Super Saiyan. I know the fire fighting starter got stale, but Infernape is just always going to be my favourite fighting type. And that is a tough choice. I like a lot of fighting types. If I was a gym leader or a member of the Elite Four, I'd almost definitely use fighting types. And last but certainly not least, it's the dragon type. And my favourite dragon type is Hydreigon. It just looks so cool. I loved levelling it in white. I got my friend to trade me one because he was ahead of me. He got to Victory Road. I got him to trade me a dino back when I was at the 6th gym, I think, so I could level it up and train it up in preparation for the league. And I absolutely love the whole evolution line. And I just love the name puns as well, how it's Einsvi, Dry, Dinos, Vilos, Hydreigon, and then they have 1 head, 2 head, and 3 heads. I love puns, and this is one of my favourite in all of Pokemon. So there we go, that is my favourite Pokemon of every single type. I'm pretty sure I didn't miss a type off. What do you think of my list? If you like it, if you don't, just let me know, leave a comment, and let me know what your favourite Pokemon of each type is. But for now, well, that's all from me. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.